What's up, guys? It is JZNES back again. Today, finally, after a long time of waiting, since I've been talking about this game for a really long time now. Ever since I did the Uncharted 3 video, which, I mean, I guess it's probably not that long ago, honestly. It just seems like so long ago. It was at least a few months ago. Plus, I've been talking about The Last of Us, I would assume, for most of the span of this channel of videos and whatnot. I know we definitely probably talked about it back in the day or whatever. So, and the Let's Plays, because that's around the time I was playing it, was back then. I got this game, I got this version specifically here, the PS3 version, back when it kind of came out, back that year in 2013. I got this for Christmas. I think it was released more in the summertime. So, I got it a little bit after everyone else did. Today we're reviewing both of them, the same game, but the remastered version is what I played for this experience here. And, so it doesn't really count as a new game by any means. They didn't really add anything. You get the DLC on there, which I didn't play this time around. But yeah, but I know what happens. I only ever played the DLC the one time, so, Uncharted 3, wait, did that video ever come out? Where is it? It must have came out, right? It was Uncharted 2. Oh, it's in the new year. Okay, cool. It was only a month ago when the video came out for Uncharted 3. Anyway, it's not important. I've been talking about it for way longer than that, since like the first Uncharted video, which was many months ago. This is and that video was like a while ago for me too, the Uncharted 3 video. Got front log or whatever you want to call it, videos to come out for a while there, so, but yeah, so, before Uncharted 4, I wanted to play The Last of Us, specifically because, and I mentioned this to a lot of people, I played The Last of Us before I played the Uncharted series, and then going back to Uncharted 1 after playing The Last of Us, and even Uncharted 2, I think Uncharted 3 was a little bit better, but just the mechanics of the stealth and hiding behind things and stuff was done so well in The Last of Us, and, I mean, really even other games like Metal Gear Solid 4, that it kind of surprises me it took them to like Uncharted 3 to really get that cover-based system down when the game was a cover-based shooter, but by the time of The Last of Us, the stealth was done so well that going back was really hard for me. And I think this is an important game to cement that kind of mentality in my head that I've been using ever since then, and I was using that before that, but this one really illustrated to me why it's specifically necessary to play games in order, and even when they're not connected, playing games by the developer that have maybe similar mechanics, or just getting the history of a developer to see how they progressed to where they are today, in terms of games, or where they were at whatever point of whatever game I need to play, is. So playing things in order, even if they're not necessarily connected, is very important to me. And one of the games that helped me realize that, why I'm talking about this, is because of The Last of Us and the Uncharted situation there. So, I thought this time around, I'll correct that mistake. I played the Uncharted games back then, probably right after this, probably like 2014 or something. Actually, I think I literally played them right after The Last of Us, because it was like New Year's when I was playing those or whatever. It was like just into the new year, so I probably played The Last of Us and then started playing the Uncharted games. Now I'm thinking about it, that would make sense. But anyway, yeah, so The Last of Us, I mean, I know I talked a little bit about it briefly in my my top 100 games video there. It was like number 50 or something like that. Because this used to be like back in like 2013 in my like top 20 games, I would say, of all time. Not that I was putting together too big of a list. I think I had it on my top 10 at one point or something like that, but it was always relatively high on the list of games there. And there's a good reason for that. And you know, I mean, I really like Uncharted 3, but I would say this is definitely the better game of the two. I'm a little less high on it, I guess, than I was like in 2013. I know my friend Jameson Harold, this is like one of his top 5 games or something to that effect. He put it really high, if not his like favorite game or something to that effect. You know, and that's justified. Oh yeah, and I guess I should mention just briefly, there's a sequel that there's a whole bunch of controversy about that I don't really care about, and I'm not gonna get into all of that. Yeah, I don't care. You know, like it was unnecessary. We all know that. I don't want to get into all that. This is the Last of Us review. We're talking about the second part that we all. The only thing I'll say about that is I was dreading that from the moment it was announced. Me and my friend Jameson were like, the first ending was so perfect. We don't need more in this world, and especially of other characters or whatever, which is what they said they were originally going to do. But no, they ended up just continuing on the same storyline, which is stupid. Because we didn't need that either. So... And I guess I should say that the DLC was like it finished the story that was there. You know, we get this thing at the end of the first one, and pretty much DLC bait. Spoilers for The Last of Us, I guess. But the end of the game, Ellie, who I guess I should start. Okay, so the whole thing about this game is it's basically this journey of this Joel and Ellie. They're, you know, a dynamic duo and a really iconic team now. But, you know, when you start off the game, they don't want anything to do with each other once you find her. And then, you know, Joel agrees to take her to the Fireflies because that's what he wants, the weapons or whatever. That was the agreement. Which he never gets, by the way. But also, you know, by that point, it's a whole different thing. So, anyway, so they go on this big journey, and I already said spoilers, but spoilers. You end up finding out, like, a little ways into the game, pretty much near the beginning, but, like, you know, a few chapters in, you know, kind of maybe like an hour or so after you meet Ellie, that she's immune to the virus. The whole thing about this game is it's like a post-apocalyptic. There was this virus that's like this cordyceps virus based on these mushrooms or whatever, and it like infects the brain and turns you into zombies in a sense, but they're like there's like these things clickers where they're like really powerful, and like one hit from them will kill you kind of thing. And for all intents and purposes, though, you can think of them as like zombies, I guess. That's kind of in the vein of where they are. So think zombies, but like it's a different sort of thing. So it's post-apocalyptic, but Ellie has like she like has a thing on her arm, and you can see where she was bit or whatever, but she seems to be immune to the virus. And I don't think we ever really get down to it, like if that would really save humanity or whatever. Joel lies at the end about when after they've gotten to the Fireflies, he has already at that point formed this intense emotional bond with her. He's basically taken her in as his new daughter. Yeah, by the I guess we'll just talk a little about this story too. Like the fucking first hour of this game is brutal. It's not even the first hour. It's like the first half hour of this game is brutal. It's like you, as Joel's daughter, Sarah, experiencing the first little bit of the apocalypse there when it's first starting. And so, but you end up getting to this part where she gets shot, like brutally, and Joel kind of has to deal with this for the rest of the game. That he's this is kind of his thing is learning to trust people again, or just let people in, because he becomes so guarded after this thing happens to him, this tragedy. His daughter dies. It's the most brutal fucking death scene. Not like gory wise, you know, but you just see him sitting there holding his daughter as she dies. And she's just a kid. And like, it's just like, you're like, fuck. You're just sitting there like, you know, probably crying at that point, like, holy shit, you know, like, they just killed this kid that I was just playing as, you know, and obviously Joel has this emotional attachment to, and you really see it in his reactions and on his face and whatever, like, how devastating that is to him. And then it, boom, The Last of Us, and you're like, holy shit, what kind of fucking game did I get myself into, you know? So it's like one of the most brutal openings to any game ever. And it shows you kind of perfectly what the character dynamic and the story is going to be about. So when he gets to Ellie, you know, at first it's just a mission, but he starts to become more protective and more guarded, or less guarded around her over time. And they share all of these really great moments together, and he's got to help her along constantly, and she helps him along. And he slowly learns to trust her. Like, he didn't want to give her a gun at first just because he didn't want to have to let her kill people or whatever. And eventually, when that kind of reaches its climax, he hands her a gun and says, you know, this is for emergencies only. Well, it's really that they were forced to, because she in that part, she has to, like, cover him with a rifle or whatever. And then she does a good job with that. So he's like, you know, it's for emergencies only. It's like this nice moment where you're like, oh, he cares. Look, like he's finally letting her, you know, try and protect him too. And that's the other thing. It's like, especially with the part where he gets injured at the college there. You can see it, like, he definitely doesn't want anybody's help, and he's very stubborn about that, you know. So, yeah, he's really stubborn about that, and he really just won't accept Ellie's help, but she still wants to help anyway, and so you can just, but over time, he just learns to let that go by the end of the game, and realizes that they need each other, kind of thing. But it's all that dynamic of those two bonding, and also getting into fights and whatnot. There's a part where Ellie runs off and he gets really worried about that. And I think one of my favorite parts, and one of the best, like, subversions of the gameplay and the everything there, is that you're Joel for like 90% of the game, and then you get to a part pretty late in the game where Joel's injured, like I was saying, from the college. And then you get to play as Ellie, just out of nowhere, and you're like, whoa, this is crazy, this is different. But you don't have any of Joel's, like, old items or anything. So you go from being, like, so bulked out with all these items and all this ammo and stuff to nothing again. And then it's just like you have to... really feel the impact in the barrenness of that. Not only because Joel is injured, but also... And you're also Ellie, who's got less experience in all this stuff, and you're trying to protect him. So not only does it work in a story element, but the gameplay element really makes you feel that sense that you're weaker or just, like, not as equipped as Joel in this sense, you know. And you're a little girl, so whereas Joel, you can pretty much, you know, beat people up, you know, combat-wise, even if you don't have, like, a melee weapon. You can pretty much do that, but Ellie, it's like you really have to sneak up on them, otherwise you're screwed, because you can stab them a bunch of times, but she's got a smaller life bar and everything. You're probably gonna die if you go to face them head on, unlike Joel, who's this, like, big bulking dude. You know, you're a 14-year-old girl who's, like, way shorter than Joel. So yeah, you really have to go with the gameplay there of the of sneaking around more and whatnot when you're Ellie. But I love that part, and I love that the first part of that part is you chasing after this deer. It kind of gives you like this perfect because Ellie is more like she does more with the bow, and the ranged weapons is more of her style, and then Joel is like just a little bit of everything. But so yeah, you get a rifle, and that whole part of the game is just great too. There's so many great parts of the game, but especially story-wise, you meet this guy David. Why is always the bad people in these games named David? Like, I mean, David from Life is Strange isn't necessarily bad, but you know, he starts kind of as an antagonistic sort of character. But you know, David, it's just funny. Anyway, so you meet this guy and his other guy after you killed the deer, and he's a really nice guy, and he just keeps, you know, being like, hey, we can help you, this kind of thing. And he actually gets you medicine, and he knows that you've killed a lot of his friends previously in the game. He even, like, there's a great scene where they're on this fire, and he starts telling that story. And he's like, yeah, there's this big bulky guy, and this is the funniest thing. It's this little girl who were killing all our guys, and you know, you just like it goes from like friendly to like oh shit, like, you know, like he knows that we've killed his guys. And so it's like this tense moment, but he never stops being nice until they have captured Ellie, and she has seen that this guy is actually a cannibal, which makes sense that there would be cannibals. It's funny. It's really funny that everyone compares like the you know, the cordyceps guys in this game to zombies, because the real zombies are the cannibals at the end of the game. They're the ones eating the people or whatever. So that's kind of crazy. But yeah, it's just a great reveal, and then everything leading up to that, and then you're trapped as Ellie, like in this jail cell or whatever, and you're seeing him like chop up this guy, and it's like it's just really tense. You're like, oh shit, it's like, she gonna make it, you know, out of this? But it's great because Joel ends up coming around at the perfect moment to, like, well, no, he doesn't really even save her, though. She gets out on her own, kind of. Yeah, no, she does. But Joel ends up coming out around at the perfect moment when you're killing David to, like, grab her off. Not that it does anything, but it's just, like, to center her, I suppose, is really what it is. You feel like the whole time, because it keeps cutting back between Ellie and Joel, and you feel like the whole time that Joel's going to come and save her. But in this one particular instance, she doesn't need saving. She saves herself, even though it's like a great thing. There's really not boss fights in this game that much, but this is like one of the boss fights where you're like running around this diner, like trying to avoid this guy David, and you have to like stab him a few times so you can grab the keys. The keys, right? So you can get out of there? Yeah, he like locks the door or something so you can grab the keys to get out of there. There's a whole great thing with that, and then it's like there's like this whole message of her not giving up, and I guess it ties into the theme of like surviving throughout the whole game or whatever. Oh yeah, and then the other thing that David really exemplifies is the other theme of the game, which is like that everything happens for a reason. There's like fate and destiny and all of that. It's like an underlying theme. People keep saying that throughout the game, like about how everything has a purpose and why it's all happening like it is and whatnot. Yeah. So I mean, okay. So that whole part is great, and then it's really cathartic when Ellie finally just like gets the knife and starts stabbing this guy to death, because like he had basically was gonna kill her and chop her up and eat her essentially, you know, which is all fucked up. But yeah, so that's a really great moment. I love that part of the game where you play as Ellie. I think that's one of the best parts of the game, and it's the perfect way to diversify the gameplay a little bit to kind of change things up. And then, well, it's cool because you have this whole part as Ellie, and you're like trying to sneak past all these guys and like stuff. And then there's this part where you cut back to Joel. This is why I was bringing this up, by the way. you cut back to Joel, you know, when you have like this very limited inventory as Ellie, you cut back to Joel and you got all of your stuff again, and you're just like, it's like a feeling of like, oh my god. It's like, wow, look, I got all my stuff back, you know, like, it's just, you feel that difference in power there. But I don't think that the game is saying it in such a way like, oh, Ellie's a little girl, she's not powerful too, because she is. Getting through all of those guys and doing all that stuff, I think that section exemplifies how powerful Ellie really is. But at the same time, they need each other to coexist, you know. And without Ellie, Joel would be dead by having died there on that thing if she hadn't saved him or whatever. So that's great. So they need each other. And it really comes into its own as a full thing at the end there when she's in the hospital. And Joel finds out that like they're gonna just basically take her brain because the cordyceps surrounds the brain or whatever. They're gonna take her brain and try to develop a vaccine off of that. And Joel ends up lying to her in the ending about how they stopped looking for a vaccine, and there's a lot of people like Ellie, and I assume the first time I played this I thought that was the truth, but I assume that what it really is Ellie is kind of actually the only one like this. I don't know. I haven't played the second game. Maybe they get into it more there. But yeah. So see, but then it gets confusing because it's like, what is the second game about? Her like going to get revenge on the Fireflies? Like, what does that mean? Like, why would she want revenge on them? You think if anything she would go to them to give herself up if that's really what she wanted. But I guess that's not really what she wanted. See, I don't want to talk about the second one, but it's making me talk about the second one because there's implications just by the fact that the story continues on, that like the ending. See, it ruins the ending for the first game, right? Like, fuck. See, this is why we're not talking about the second one. We're not talking about it anymore. We're done. All right. So, it's a good ending though. I like it. I just it really, my point is it exemplifies what Joel is willing to go through at the end to keep Ellie alive. Because yeah, so they definitely care for each other, and by the end their emotional bond is really powerful. There's a great scene kind of right before the end too, where they're just they're in this like, I don't know if it's like a train station or something, but they Ellie's been kind of quiet, and then then you have this great moment like she sees something off, like she like climbs up here to like drop the ladder down or whatever. She sees something, she runs off. Joel goes up there, and you see it's these giraffes, this like pack of giraffes that are just wild and free now, and you see how the like plant life has overtaken the buildings and whatever, and the giraffes come up and like start eating off of the plant life on the building, and it's kind of like that scene in Jurassic Park, you know, with the brontosauruses or whatever, brontosauruses, brachiosauruses, whatever they are, you know, the big long-necked ones. It's kind of like that, and then they like go up and pet the giraffe, and then they just watch them like go off into the distance, and it's like this really nice, powerful, emotional moment, and there's a callback to the line from earlier where he's like, you know, is the view everything you wanted? And she's like, well, it has its ups and downs, but you know, it's pretty dang good. And so, and you just stand there and watch the majesty of nature, which is not something that you see a lot in the game, because most of the game it's bleak and pretty much depressing like everywhere, and it's very urban. You're very in the cities and whatnot. But by the time you get there, it's like, wow, like look, the city and nature has combined, and that's pretty cool, you know. Nature's taking over again. Taking the world back kind of thing. It's just a cool kind of concept to really look at there. So, yeah, neato. Love that moment. Love a lot of the moments. I love how earlier too there's this little girl at the like very beginning of the game who's like holding a giraffe. I don't know what the connection is with all the giraffes throughout the game, but they're like very like well placed throughout the game to kind of subtly like, hey, there might be a moment with giraffes or something like that. I don't know, but it's like they're like everywhere in the game. It's just kind of funny how that works. And yeah, so in terms of characters and like the story and whatnot, like I know I've gone over a little bit of it, but like I don't want to like ruin the whole dynamic of the characters and whatnot. I've talked about some of the major points. I was going to talk about the DLC, which is like, there's one part where you're in this mall or whatever. It's the only time that you ever see hunters and clickers and stuff together to where they can like fight each other, which is pretty cool. But also it kind of takes place around the time when you're like going to look for medicine for Jewel or whatever. So you like go to this mall near there. So that's cool. And then the other part of the DLC is this line from the end where her and her friend, you know, right before she gets infected or whatever, and then they get infected together, and her friend dies, but she survives. So yeah, that's cool. So that's a big theme of the game is loss and survival, and I think that's very well exemplified in the DLC as well there. But you know, I'm not really gonna like go super in depth about that. But yeah, like the game itself is great. It's kind of slow to start, honestly, because like you don't have a lot of the stuff. It kind of eases you into it. But there's like the first few hours are kind of slow. But by the time you get to like Ellie and stuff, it gets a little bit better and whatnot. Here, I'm gonna look in the guide and just see, kind of make sure I get all the main points about the the story, like what's going on and whatnot. So yeah, like the first part is kind of you getting to Ellie, and then you have to like smuggle her out of the city. You're trying to get her to these other people, to the Fireflies or whatever, elsewhere. But then you go to this town. You eventually get to this town. Well, you have this other person, Tess, who Jewel is like really attached to. She ends up dying a little bit along the way to kind of get you ready for the themes of like there's gonna be people who die in this game kind of thing. But yeah, so what was I gonna say? Well, eventually you end up in this town, Bill's town, which you get this friend Bill, so you can get a car, is why you go there, or whatever. And, you know, Bill's kind of an asshole, but, you know, you go there. What I like about Bill's town is it's the first time you really ever get, like, a sense of, like, openness. There's a lot of different directions to go when you get to his town and a lot to explore, and exploration is a big aspect of The Last of Us in terms of gameplay and whatnot. You have to look around to get supplies so you can make like med kits and like you can make these shivs which like either you can stab an enemy with or you can open a door, a lot of locked doors with. And there's pills that can help you increase your like your maximum health, or like you have this hearing ability, so where you can see guys like in this special mode or whatever. And that has like a limited range, so it gives you more of that, and other things like your weapon sway and just crafting time, like crafting med kits and all that kind of stuff, or healing speed. That's all these pills that you can find, but you really have to explore to find these pills for the most part. So there's always stuff to explore for. There's Firefly pendants. Later on, there's these comics that you can get for Ellie, so that's something to explore for. And there's gears also, which help, or basically a currency system to help upgrade your weapons. And then there's these pliers, which you can find around, and those are like kind of give you access to all of your upgrades for your weapons eventually. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot to explore for, is my point. Ammo and just all of that other stuff. Just to find all of this stuff is pretty helpful. And you know, I mean, I know that on the easier modes, like I played, I think on easy, but on the easier modes, you do get more supplies and whatnot. But on the harder modes, it is very survival based, you know, and you kind of run out of supplies because there's not a lot of them around. And I guess that's more realistic to the setting. There would be less supplies around and stuff, but I don't know. Just a thought. But yeah, so the Bill town is kind of like the first time where you really get to explore and stuff. And then when you get to Bill, you kind of help him along to get to where this car is. You end up finding out that he's also lost his partner or his friend, or you know, his love interest or whatever. Is implied that that's a thing. So, but yeah, you get this car, and then you go along. Yeah, you get there's a lot of different towns. There's like not a lot to say about all of, because there's a lot of the game that's just like kind of hey, we're running through this area, you know, kind of thing. But eventually the goal is where you're headed after that is you're trying to get to your brother, who you've seen at the beginning of the game, but your brother Tommy, because he knows where the Fireflies is. That's what you're looking for the whole time. You kind of lose the trail of where the Fireflies are because I believe that like a lot of the meeting places where they were supposed to be, kind of like they're all dead, you know, so it's like it just doesn't work out kind of thing. So you eventually get to this Tommy's dam there. You talk to him, you explain the situation, and he's like, yeah, you know, I'll take Ellie off of your hands. You don't have to worry about her anymore. And Ellie gets mad at this, runs off, and you get this great scene with her about how she's telling you that, like, you're in this house or whatever. She's like, I don't want anybody else to take me to the Fireflies. I want it to be you because I trust you, and you know, we have been on this journey together this whole time. You and I, that's what's gonna happen. I don't want anybody else to take me. So that gets you. Oh, sorry. That gets you to take her. Then it's like the university and all that other stuff I was talking about. So yeah. So that's the story. That's like how it is. That's everything there. The gameplay, like I said, is mostly like cover shooter sort of stuff, but it's more about the stealth elements of that, because you have limited resources and you don't always want to shoot guys because then you'll cause a reaction. Much like in a Metal Gear Solid game, if you shoot a guy, they're going to hear your gunshot and then everyone's going to get really suspicious. So that's not always the best way to go about things. So you often want to sneak up on people. So it's kind of a great merging of these concepts of sneaking around and also collecting things. So you're actively looking for stuff while there's enemies patrolling. So you have to kind of balance these two things to really get, like, you have to really be cognizant of everything that's going on around you, because you never know what's coming. Yeah. So, right. So that's the gameplay. There's a lot of different weapons. You don't start off with a lot of them. You start off with like a pistol, and you get a revolver at some point. You get a shotgun, and it just kind of keeps building. Your arsenal keeps building. So you can become really powerful by the end of the game. You get like a rifle. You get an assault rifle at the end of the game. That's the very end of the game. You get a flamethrower near the end of the game, which is pretty cool. There's all sorts of different revolvers, and like you get another one with like a scope, and there's one other. You get like a small, like really powerful pistol or whatever. So So yeah, you get all those. You get like Molotov cocktails and these nail bombs that you can make with different stuff that you find around the world. So that's pretty cool. You can kind of craft those and whatnot. And those are really powerful as well. But you get pretty loaded up, but you don't always have ammo for everything, which is kind of the hard part of it. Or if you're playing easy, you have too much ammo for everything. Or you have too much ammo of the thing that you don't want to use, but you have not enough ammo of the other things. Really how it goes. So yeah. And it's cool because you can upgrade... Oh, there's the bow. I forgot about that one. You can upgrade your different items to carry more ammo. You like upgrade different aspects of them. Like I was going to say on the rifle, you get a scope if you upgrade it for that, which is pretty cool. So yeah, stuff like that. Stuff like fire rate and like clip capacity, how fast you reload, that kind of stuff. You can all upgrade all of that in the upgrade system. So yeah, that's the gameplay. You know, you go around. There's a lot of stealth, like I was saying, and that's done really well. The tension, I think, of the atmosphere, along with the music and like the it's always pretty dark around, but like you just when there's enemies around, you feel like at any moment you could just get swarmed and die. So it's always really tense, and you always really want to be like very careful. So you're always so really it gets that kind of survival horror aspect in that sense, but it's not really horror in a sense. I mean, there are some like kind of scary-ish moments, but I would say it's more about the relationship between Joel and Ellie, and that's the main point of the game. That's why we're doing what we're doing here. But I wouldn't necessarily call the game scary. It's tense is what the game is. It's more of a tense sort of thing, suspenseful, you know. But yeah. So So yeah, that's the gameplay. The gameplay is really good. As I talked about before, obviously the story and the characters are all really well done, and I think that's really fantastic that they can. It's a really good look into this like dynamic between these two characters, and they're always the main characters. I guess I forgot to talk about the at one point you get to these brothers. They both end up dying. One of them gets infected, and then you end up having to kill the infected kid. And so the other brother commits suicide. He kills himself, which is crazy. It's just a really intense moment. You actually go through a big chunk, you know, not a chunk, like this one chapter of the game with these brothers, and then it just, yeah, it goes bad. It goes south. Throughout all of it, though, Joel and Ellie survive. You know, that's the kind of thing. So many people die around them, and yet they keep on surviving, no matter what they have to do, no matter who they have to kill, or how many people they lose. They just keep surviving, and I think that's really cool. But yeah, so it's a really emotional story, and character development, all that is really emotional. It's one of those games when you go through it for the first time, and even when I was going through it this time, not as much as when I was going through it the first time, but you really feel an impact, much like a Life is Strange sort of thing, where it's like one of those games that really affects you. I remember this was one of those games, like Life is Strange, where I kind of had to get all my friends to play it, and I played it with my friend Jameson. My friend John just played it on his own, but I remember I got him to play it. My friend Nick, I think I got to play it at one point. I don't know if he had played it or not, though. But anyway, and then Mayap, you know, is another game where I had to fucking really push for him to play it. But when he finally did, he's like, oh, wow, you know, it's crazy. So, but yeah. Um, oh, he's okay. Anyway, so it's a really emotional story, and I like that. I like how it goes and how it works there. Love the characters, love the story. That's great. Gameplay's really good. The music, like, it comes in when it needs to, and it comes and goes. It's more ambient most of the time, but then, like, there's tracks like this where it'll probably play over, like, an emotional moment or something. But it really does its job and really works super well. I like the music a lot. Um, so, yeah, that's really good. And the atmosphere and the graphics, I guess I haven't even talked about that yet. The atmosphere and, like, the world design of this post-apocalyptic world is, like, really well done. I really like... It doesn't feel like video gamey. It feels, like, really real, and I really like that. The game, especially on the PS3, looked like just phenomenal, like mind-blowing back in 2013. It was like, holy shit, look what they can fucking do on the PS3. And the PS4 version looks really good too. They added, I think, 60 frames a second or something, like that is the difference or whatnot, and then they cleaned it up a little bit. But I remember the PS3 version looking really good. It was like, it's probably that and Metal Gear Solid 4 in contention for the best looking games of the PS3 era. So yeah. Is this thing over already? No, it's just like, okay. So yeah, like really, really solid looking game. And especially for the time in 2013 there. You gotta remember this is before the PS4 or whatever. So it was like really the swan song for the PS3, one of the last big great games for the PS3 there, back in the day. But yeah, graphically and the atmosphere really gives you this feeling of this like world that has just been left to rot essentially, without the modern technology and conveniences and electricity and whatnot. And that's another big theme of the game is like how the world used to be, and Ellie's like kind of in awe of a lot of the things that Joel gets to tell her about how times were before. Oh god, there's this great thing between them where at Tommy's dam he like tries to give you this picture of Sarah, Joel's daughter or whatever, and Joel won't take it. And then later on, Ellie like gives you the picture, um, like in this really emotional moment. She's just like, "Here, I got this for you. I kept it. I know you didn't want it then, but like by that time, Joel has grown enough to where he's like he takes the picture, and then it's just like it's really a nice moment. You have to take the picture and you can look at it, and it's like, oh man, it's Sarah again. Like it's that picture of Sarah. Um, I really love that moment because it like it shows how much Ellie cares, and she doesn't want Joel to forget about his daughter, and I it's like, why wouldn't Joel take that picture? I get it. At the time, it's about like he doesn't want to hold on to the past, but it's nice that later on he does get the picture so that he can at least have that of his daughter, so he doesn't have to forget what she looks like. And not that he would, but you know, it's just like he has something to look at of her. I like that. That's just a really nice thing. That's a powerful and emotional moment there. That just made me think of that. But anyway, so yeah, I love the atmosphere and all of that. It's really well done. And the tenseness and the clickers and whatever, and like the enemies that aren't the humans. I mean, they are humans, but they were humans. You know what I mean? The infected are really scary in the sense that like I said earlier, they're pretty dangerous. Most enemies in the game are pretty dangerous, but they're scarier than the hunters and whatnot. Just because, especially the clickers, because like anytime you set off one of those, you're pretty much screwed. If you don't have some shivs or something, and even if you do, if there's like a pack of clickers, you're pretty fucked. So I think they did a good job at making their enemies just the right amount of of hard to deal with or whatnot. So I think that's great. I think pretty much everything about the game is great. I don't know if I really have that many complaints. It's a short game. It's maybe like 15 hours, if any, if even. Um, so I like that. It gets in and does what it needs to and tells its story, and then it's over, you know, and that's it. And I like that. I like how it doesn't drag on for forever. Um, so, yeah. It's really well done, and it's just one of these games where it's a really great experience, for sure. So, yeah. Pretty much everything about it is great. I don't really know. There's not a lot to say. It's one of those things you kind of have to experience yourself to really get the impact. I've explained things pretty well, but like none of that is going to mean as much to you. You have to be there. You have to experience that relationship between Joel and Ellie and really to understand why their dynamic is so powerful and why it just tugs at the heartstrings and whatnot and makes for one of the greatest video game teams of all time. Um, it's just a really powerful and tense and emotional story, and that's what the game excels at doing. More so than even like the Uncharted games are more they have stuff like that, but it's like it's so undersold to the rest of the experience. You know, like this is definitely more about the drama and the characters, and this is one of those games where I have this stigma about it where it's like I love this game, but like going back to it is really hard for me because it's just such a depressing game because of the state of the world and the characters and whatnot and just like how it is. I don't think it's as depressing as I like make it out to be in my mind every time I like think about it. I'm like, oh man, I gotta play The Last of Us again. That's super depressing. But I guess I just gotta be in the right state of mind to be playing the game or whatever. And it's one of those games where I would have had this review done a lot sooner and would have been moving on to other games. But I really don't want to just play like an hour of this game. I want to like really play like a bunch of hours of this game. So like the last session of this game, which I just played today, where I needed to do like 3 or 4 hours, I knew I wanted to do that all at once because I didn't want to just like do part of that. Well, and especially since the last section of the game that I played, the university through the ending, is like probably the best part of the game there. So, yeah, because that includes and encompasses all that stuff where you get to play as Ellie, and then at the end there's a great like. It's a really hard because there's so many enemies and guards stuff to like at the hospital there to like get through all of that is really tough. So yeah, even with all of your weapons, it's a fucking challenge to get through there. It's the hardest part of the whole game, and they put it like right near the end there. So yeah, but yeah, so I think that's about what there is to say about the game. I think it's a great game, and it's one of those games that everyone should play. It's one of those games that like I can pretty much recommend to almost anybody. There's no real flaws in the controls or any of that that'll like really set you off to be like, oh, this is antiquated or whatnot. It still really controls super well to modern standards and whatnot. Some games, when you go back to them, it's like, okay, it's a little funky. I don't really have that many control problems with that many games, but I know some people do. But this is one where, regardless of all of that, I can just recommend this wholeheartedly. in any capacity. I just like, there's nothing really that wrong with the game. It's kind of the perfect. It's kind of a perfect game, you know. I don't know, like, you know, I'm not gonna. You know, obviously it's like top 50 games for me, but I'm not gonna say this is like one of my all-time favorite games or whatever. But like, when I played it, it definitely left an impact on me. But my point is, regardless of all that, I see how I can appreciate how not flawed the game is and how it's nearly a perfect game. And for that, I'm gonna still give it a 10 out of 10. I would have given it back then. It's one of those rare games that would actually get the 10 from me. I think it's a very important game that everyone should play within their lifetime or whatnot. It's one of those top 100 games you should play before you die kind of thing, for sure. Because it's just one of those really special games, you know? And I really love it, and I know my friends really love it, and you know, it's the funny thing is I'm not as high on it as like some people are. Some people really hold it up to a standard, but I can't deny that people hold it up to that standard because it is great. It is that kind of game. I guess I've just become so desensitized to that kind of thing. You know, you get way too hyped about stuff because of the internet. There's so many reviews like, oh, it's the greatest game of all time. Rah, rah, rah. Uncharted 2, the greatest game of all time, right? It's hard to separate yourself from that hype, but it's one of those games where, yeah, it kind of lives up to that hype, I would say. But I also am not going to place it... It's one of the best games that I've played, but it's like, also... It's not... It's lower on my favorites list because there's so many other games that are more favorited for me that I have more of a connection with. But it's hard to deny, you know, like Ellie says, it's hard to deny that view, I guess, or whatever. Because it's a fantastic game, and it's nearly perfect as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, The Last of Us, fucking really great. It's a 10 out of 10, and that's it. So, hopefully Uncharted 4 will continue on the great gameplay aspects of The Last of Us. And until next time, this has been JZNES saying keep it classic, stick around for more reviews, underrated games, and I'll see you guys in the next one. JZ out.